She had done everything right. Nancy Guthrie, 84 years old, sharp-minded, deeply faithful, beloved by everyone who knew her, had spent the evening of January 31st, 2026, exactly the way she often did, at her daughter Annie's home in Tucson, Arizona, sharing a meal with family. It was a Saturday. It was ordinary. It was the kind of evening that billions of people across the world have had 1,000 times without a second thought. When dinner ended, Nancy was dropped off at her own home, a house she had lived in for over 50 years, in the quiet, upscale Catalina foothills neighborhood north of Tucson. She was last seen there at approximately 9:45 p.m. that Saturday night. A family member watched her go inside. The door closed. The porch light was on. Nobody knew that was the last time anyone would see Nancy Guthrie alive and free. Born Nancy Ellen Long on January 27, 1942, in Fort Worth, Kentucky, she was not famous by the world's definition of the word, but to the people who mattered, her children, her church community, her neighbors, she was everything. She moved to Tucson in the early 1970s with her family and built a life there. She was a woman of deep Christian faith, rarely missing Sunday services. She was the kind of neighbor who remembered birthdays and brought food when someone was grieving. Her husband, Charles Guthrie, died in 1988 at age 49, taken suddenly during a mining trip in Mexico, leaving Nancy a widow at 46 with 3 children to raise alone, Savannah, Annie, and Cameron. She did it without complaint, without surrendering. She worked, she prayed, she kept the family together. One of those children grew up to become the co-anchor of the Today Show on NBC, one of the most recognized faces in American morning television. Savannah Guthrie would later tell the world, her mother was strong, unbreakable, God's precious daughter Nancy. Sunday, February 1st, 2026, Nancy was supposed to watch a live-streamed church service at a friend's home, something she looked forward to every week without fail. She did not show up. Her friends called. No answer. Her family began to worry. At 11:56 a.m., family members went to her home to check on her. What they found stopped them cold. The front door was propped open. The house was quiet. Nancy was gone. At 12:03 p.m., the family called 911. The Pima County Sheriff's Department arrived and immediately understood this was not a case of an elderly woman wandering off. Sheriff Chris Nanos, who would become the public face of the investigation, later told reporters something that chilled the country. Nancy Guthrie could barely walk 50 yards by herself. She relied on heart medication every single day. She had a pacemaker. She would not and could not have left on her own. Her phone was inside. Her Apple Watch was inside. Her medication was still on the counter. Then investigators found what turned a missing persons call into something far more serious. Blood. On the front porch. Drops of it, precise and deliberate, the kind that told a story. The DNA came back quickly. It was Nancy's, combined with the fact that her doorbell camera, a Google Nest device, had been disabled and that the app on her phone showed her pacemaker disconnecting in the early hours of February 1st. Investigators reached a conclusion that Sheriff Nanos announced to the country. Nancy Guthrie had been taken from her home against her will, in the middle of the night, by someone who had planned it. Perhaps the most haunting detail in the entire case was discovered through technology. Nancy's Apple Watch, the device paired with her pacemaker app, stopped transmitting in the early morning hours of February 1st, not because the battery died, because it was disconnected, left behind on purpose. Her pacemaker was still sending a signal, but her watch was no longer there to receive it. Investigators used Bluetooth detection equipment in the days that followed, sweeping the neighborhood and surrounding desert, trying to detect that pacemaker signal, hoping to find Nancy still alive, somewhere within range. They found nothing.
The suspect had thought of almost everything. He had disabled Nancy's Google Nest doorbell camera, or so he believed. He approached it. He covered the lens with his gloved hand. Then, when that did not fully block the view, he reached into the garden beside the porch and pulled out a plant, shrubbery, roots and all, and stuffed it in front of the camera to block its view entirely. He was careful. He was methodical. He clearly knew the camera was there and made deliberate efforts to defeat it. What the suspect did not know, and what would become one of the most critical breakthroughs in the case, was that Google's Nest cameras store footage in the cloud, not just locally. Even after the camera was physically disabled and the doorbell device was stolen from the home, Google's cloud servers still held the data. Investigators contacted Google. Google partnered with law enforcement, and the footage was recovered. On February 10, 2026, 9 days after Nancy disappeared, FBI Director Kash Patel released that footage to the public. The footage was grainy and shot from the angle of the doorbell camera, but it was enough. A masked man, a ski mask with holes cut for the eyes and mouth, a 25-liter Ozark Trail Hiker Pack backpack, the kind sold at Walmart for around $20, dark gloves, and at his waistband, visible in the footage, a holster. He was armed. The FBI gave the public a physical description. Male, approximately 5 feet 9 inches to 5 feet 10 inches tall. Average build. A black mustache visible below the mask. And critically, investigators believed he had been to the house before. The same camera caught him on what appeared to be a prior visit, without a backpack, without the mask. He had been casing the home. This detail, that the suspect had visited the property before February 1st, transformed the nature of the case entirely. This was not a random crime. This was not an opportunistic break-in that escalated. This man had looked at Nancy Guthrie's home, studied it, identified the camera, planned how to defeat it, and returned with everything he needed: the mask, the gloves, the backpack, the weapon, and the knowledge of exactly where the camera was mounted. Former FBI profiler Greg McCrary was clear in his assessment. This man did not knock on the door randomly and bump into Nancy Guthrie. She was targeted, deliberately, by someone who knew enough about her to choose her specifically. On February 11th, a CNN reporter witnessed FBI agents searching the desert roads and brush surrounding Nancy's home, carefully scanning the ground through saguaro cacti and thick Arizona scrubland. One agent bent down and picked up a dark glove from the side of the road, approximately 1.5 miles from the Guthrie home. The glove matched the gloves seen in the doorbell camera footage. That glove was sent to a forensic laboratory in Florida for DNA analysis and genetic genealogy testing, the same cutting-edge technique that had identified the Golden State Killer and the Gilgo Beach murderer from cold cases that had gone unsolved for decades. But then came news that slowed the investigation's momentum. Sheriff Chris Nanos told reporters there was a complication with the DNA evidence. A mixed DNA profile found at the scene. Mixed DNA occurs when genetic material from more than one person is present in a sample, making it significantly harder to isolate a single profile for comparison. The sample had been sent to a specialized laboratory in Florida. Analysts were working to separate the profiles, but it was taking time. Every day of processing was another day Nancy was missing.
On February 2nd, 2026, just 1 day after Nancy vanished, a CBS affiliate television station in Tucson received a letter, a ransom demand. Somebody was claiming to have Nancy Guthrie, and they wanted to be paid. The demand escalated quickly. By February 3rd, multiple media outlets, including TMZ, had received communications. The demand for $1 million in Bitcoin by February 5th. If that deadline was missed, the price would rise to $6 million by February 9th. Cryptocurrency, untraceable, International. The choice of payment method told investigators something important about whoever sent the note. They understood digital anonymity, or at least believed they did. On February 4th, Savannah Guthrie appeared in a video posted to her Instagram alongside her siblings Annie and Cameron, 3 adult children, standing together, speaking directly to the camera and directly to whoever had their mother. Savannah's voice was controlled but cracking at the edges. She told the person holding their mother that the family was ready to talk, but first, they needed proof. She said it clearly. They live in a world where voices and images can be manipulated. They needed confirmation that Nancy was alive. They needed proof of life before any conversation about money could happen. On February 7th, the siblings posted another video. The tone had shifted. They had received communication. Someone had reached out. And now Savannah Guthrie, the woman who co-anchors one of the most watched morning shows in America, who interviews presidents and world leaders without flinching, looked directly into a camera and said 7 words that broke the country. "We received your message and we understand." She told the person holding her mother, "We beg you now to return our mother to us. This is very valuable to us, and we will pay." February 5th. The first deadline passed. No payment had been made, or at least, no payment authorities were aware of. Then February 9th. The second deadline also passed. And then, silence. No further communication from whoever had sent the original notes. No proof of life. No confirmation Nancy was alive. No new demands. Just silence, stretching across the Arizona desert like the heat, oppressive, total, and offering no answers. Into the silence stepped predators. A California man was arrested for sending a fraudulent ransom demand, attempting to exploit the Guthrie family's desperation for profit. TMZ later reported receiving a third letter from someone claiming to know the kidnapper's identity and demanding 1 Bitcoin for that information. The chaos of misinformation, fake tips, and bad actors surrounding the case became a serious investigative problem. Thousands of tips flooded the tip lines. Investigators estimated that roughly 10% had any genuine value, meaning investigators were sifting through mountains of noise, trying to find a single thread of signal. While the FBI managed the tip lines and the media circus, the real investigative hope was being processed 2,000 miles away in a laboratory in Florida. Genealogy, the technique that cracked the Golden State Killer case in 2018 after 40 years of failure, works by comparing unknown DNA to public genealogy databases, building family trees backwards from distant relatives to identify who a DNA sample belongs to. If the DNA extracted from the glove found near Nancy's home could be sufficiently isolated from the mixed profile, it could potentially produce a name, a real name, and with that name, an address, a photograph, a life. The question was time, and Nancy, without her heart medication, was running out of it.
February 10th brought the closest thing to a breakthrough the investigation had seen. During the evening, Pima County Sheriff's Department announced that a subject had been detained during a traffic stop in Rio Rico, Arizona, a small community approximately 60 miles south of Tucson, sitting just north of the Mexican border. FBI agents and sheriff's investigators simultaneously executed a search warrant on a property and vehicle in the same area. The whole country held its breath. By morning, the hope had deflated. The man detained, who gave his name only as Carlos when he spoke to reporters, was released without charges after hours of questioning. He said FBI agents told him it was about a kidnapping. He said he had no idea who Nancy Guthrie was. He made deliveries in the Tucson area and had been in the wrong place at the wrong time. He was questioned from 4 p.m. until midnight, his home and vehicle searched, and then investigators gave him no indication they planned to return. Sheriff Nanos confirmed. The man was determined not to be involved. The investigation was back to zero. While Carlos returned to his life, the FBI expanded the investigation in directions the public was only beginning to see. Agents visited gun stores throughout the Tucson area. They showed owners printed sheets containing faces and names, inquiring about firearm purchases over the past year. They were tracing the holster visible in the doorbell camera footage, working backward from the type of holster to the type of weapon to the type of person likely to carry it. They were also investigating whether the suspect had an accomplice. The doorbell footage showed one man, but investigators had not ruled out that someone else was involved in planning or executing the abduction. As law enforcement worked methodically, the internet arrived in Tucson with a completely different approach. True crime content creators, YouTubers, podcasters, live streamers set up outside the Guthrie home, broadcasting live to audiences of thousands. One creator reportedly attracted 22,000 simultaneous viewers during a single live stream from the street outside. Missing person posters went up across Tucson. A sign appeared on the sidewalk outside Nancy's house addressed directly to whoever had taken her. Unintentional things happen, and we get that. The FBI, while grateful for public attention, quietly asked volunteers and creators to give investigators the space they needed to work. One theory that investigators could not dismiss was the proximity of the crime to the U.S.-Mexico border. Nancy's home in the Catalina foothills was approximately 1 hour's drive from the Mexican border. The person of interest had been stopped 60 miles south of Tucson, near that same border. The FBI contacted Mexican federal authorities. Mexican nonprofit groups known as the Madres Buscadoras de Sonora, mothers who organize searches for missing persons in northern Mexico, announced they were looking for Nancy on the Mexican side of the border. A flyer reading Nancy Guthrie desaparecida, Nancy Guthrie, disappeared, appeared on her Tucson mailbox, printed in Spanish, aimed at Spanish-speaking communities who might have seen something. February 24th, 2026. Day 25 since Nancy Guthrie disappeared. Investigators returned to the home, active again after pool cleaners and landscapers had been the only presence for 2 weeks. Agents in the backyard. Agents at the front door where the blood had been found. Another search. Another day of looking. Law enforcement sources told reporters they were preparing to return the home to the family, a sign that the immediate crime scene had given up everything it had to give. Some experts watching the case began to use a phrase that no family ever wants to hear: going cold. On February 24th, 2026, Savannah Guthrie posted another video to Instagram. But this one was different. Her family was offering a reward of up to $1 million for the safe recovery of her mother, combined with the FBI's reward of $100,000 and the additional $102,500 from Tucson Crime Stoppers. The total reward for information in the Nancy Guthrie case had reached $1.2 million. It was one of the largest rewards ever offered in a private missing persons case in American history. A senior law enforcement official told reporters, "We do not need another 1,000 calls. We need one. Money can erode a lot of allegiances." Behind the scenes, senior law enforcement officials were privately expressing something the family had not yet allowed themselves to say publicly. The fact that both ransom deadlines had passed without a response, without proof of life, without any confirmed communication from whoever actually had Nancy, was deeply troubling. Legitimate kidnappers who want money maintain contact. They negotiate. They provide proof of life to demonstrate they have something worth paying for. The silence after the deadlines was not the behavior of a rational financial negotiation. It was something else, something that investigators could not explain, or would not explain publicly. Every person following this case understood a fact that made every passing day more unbearable. Nancy Guthrie was 84 years old. She had a pacemaker. She relied on heart medication that she took every single day, medication that was still sitting on her kitchen counter when her family found the door propped open on February 1st. Savannah Guthrie said it in the February 4th video with a mother's urgency. She lives in constant pain. She is without any medicine. She needs it to survive. She needs it not to suffer. Every day that passed without that medication was a day that brought Nancy closer to a medical crisis, even if nothing else had happened to her. Let's be clear about what investigators actually hold as of day 25. They have doorbell camera footage recovered via Google Cloud Backup, showing a masked suspect. Height, build, mustache, backpack model, all identified. They have a glove found 1.5 miles from the home, with DNA evidence currently being processed for genetic genealogy in Florida. They have the Bitcoin wallet address from the ransom note and evidence that money was sent to it by someone. They have gun store records being reviewed. They have clothing details, shoes, pants, shirt, jacket, being traced through retail records. And they have over 4,000 tips, approximately 10% of which investigators consider actionable. The foundation of a case exists. The name at the center of it has not yet been found. The case that broke the Golden State Killer took 4 decades before genetic genealogy solved it. The Gilgo Beach murders went unsolved for over a decade before the same technique produced a name and an arrest. The FBI and the Pima County Sheriff's Department are not working on a cold case. They are working on an active one. The DNA sample is in a Florida laboratory right now. Genetic genealogy analysts are building family trees. They are narrowing. They are working backward through DNA matches in public genealogy databases, identifying relatives, tracing family lines, eliminating and including. When they find the match, and every investigator on this case believes they will find one, they will have a name. While the investigation continues, Tucson has not stood still. Flowers, handmade signs, candles, and prayers have accumulated outside Nancy's home. Community members leave notes. Churches across the city hold prayers for Nancy's return. People who have never met her, who know her only as the mother of a television anchor or as an elderly woman on a missing poster, have made her case personal. The 88 crime tip line rings constantly. People are watching. A city of over 1 million people has turned into a network of eyes. Throughout this entire ordeal, 25 days of public silence and private terror, the Guthrie family has done something remarkable. They have not attacked. They have not threatened. They have spoken directly and openly to whoever has their mother, with an approach that hostage negotiation experts recognized as strategically and emotionally precise. Cameron Guthrie said, "Whoever is out there holding our mother, we want to hear from you." Annie Guthrie stood beside her siblings in every video. And Savannah Guthrie, the most publicly visible of the three, the one whose face the country knows from their morning televisions, said something that cut straight through. It is never too late to do the right thing. Chief of Detectives for the Pima County Attorney's Office, Fabian Pacheco, said something simple and direct in his CBS interview that captured the entire investigation's current state. It only takes one tip, just one, to break the case open, to offer that lead that we so desperately need. Somebody knows. That is the statistical and investigative reality of a case like this. The suspect drove away from that house in a vehicle. He passed cameras, traffic cameras, business cameras, neighborhood cameras. He spoke to someone before this happened. He made a purchase. He left a trace. Somewhere in the 200-plus tips already received, or in the phone call not yet made, or in the genetic genealogy lab in Florida, the answer to where Nancy Guthrie is already exists. One of the most specific investigative threads available is the backpack, a 25-liter Ozark Trail hiker pack, sold exclusively at Walmart, retails for under $25. It is one of the most common hiking backpacks sold in America, but every unit sold at a Walmart with a camera, which is every Walmart, was potentially recorded at the point of purchase. Every transaction on a card is traceable. Every receipt is retrievable. FBI investigators were working the retail angle. If the suspect bought that specific backpack recently, the purchase may be on camera and linked to a payment method. It is a long shot, but long shots have broken cases before. Based on everything released publicly, here is the profile investigators have built of the person who took Nancy Guthrie. He is a male, 5'9" to 5'10", average build, with a black mustache. He had prior knowledge of Nancy's home. He visited it before the abduction. He understood surveillance cameras enough to attempt defeating one, but not enough to know about cloud backup. He carried a holstered firearm, suggesting familiarity with weapons. He chose an 84-year-old woman with limited mobility, a target who could not fight back or flee. He demanded cryptocurrency, suggesting some technological awareness. He had access to a vehicle capable of transporting a person, and based on the Rio Rico traffic stop and the Mexican border proximity, investigators have not ruled out movement across the international border. To understand the gravity of this case, consider what Savannah Guthrie gave up to be present for it. She had been scheduled to co-host the opening ceremonies of the 2026 Winter Olympics for NBC, one of the highest-profile broadcast events in the world, watched by hundreds of millions of people. She stepped away. She left the broadcast. She chose her mother. In one of the most understated acts of love captured by this entire story, one of America's most recognizable television personalities walked away from the biggest broadcast moment of the year to stand outside a house in Tucson, Arizona, and film videos on her phone begging someone to bring her mother home. On February 24th, Savannah Guthrie posted the words that have stayed with everyone following this case. Please keep praying without ceasing. We still believe. We still believe in a miracle. We still believe that she can come home. Hope against hope. Hope against hope. It is a phrase from the Book of Romans, a description of the kind of faith that does not require evidence, that persists precisely because the evidence is insufficient. A daughter who has interviewed some of the most powerful people in the world, a woman whose professional life is built on facts and verification, choosing to anchor herself to something beyond facts, because the facts on day 25 are not enough. If you are watching this documentary and something about this case feels familiar, if something you have seen or heard connects to any detail of what has been described, the FBI wants to hear from you right now. Call 1-800-CALL-FBI. Visit tips.fbi.gov. Call 88-CRIME. That is 520-882-7463 in Tucson. Call the Pima County Sheriff's Department tip line at 520-351-4900. The reward stands at $1.2 million. A senior law enforcement official said it clearly. Money can erode a lot of allegiances. If you know something, now is the time. It only takes one call. Nancy Ellen Long Guthrie, born January 27, 1942. A widow, a mother of three, a woman of faith who never missed Sunday church, a grandmother, a neighbor, a woman who cultivated a quiet life in the Arizona desert for over 50 years and deserved to live every single remaining day of it in peace. As of this documentary, she has not been found. The investigation is active. The DNA is being processed. The reward is $1.2 million. The FBI is working around the clock, and her daughter is posting videos every few days, looking directly into a phone camera, refusing to stop believing. Somewhere out there, Nancy Guthrie is waiting to come home, and somewhere out there, one person knows exactly where she is.